So I made a mistake last season and I put in a Vivaldi board, but I put it in, I think it's called a Vivaldi board, the wrong way. So instead of, this was the side facing the hive as opposed to the other side. Now the other side wouldn't have created more than bee space. So the bees could get around the frames, but they wouldn't do this. This happened because there was extra space and bees fill extra space with comb. So I had to get it out of there because I have to be able to inspect inside and see the frames. And so I had to pull this out, unfortunately. But it is an interesting opportunity to see and talk about the differences in comb. So this here is honeycomb, or at this point kind of a sugar comb, because you can see the honey is just about clear. There's no real color like you'll get later in the season. And so I thought that was really interesting that at this time of the year, whatever's happening, they're getting sugars, but they're not the color of honey. And I did not, I haven't fed them, so I don't think that that's sugar water unless someone else is feeding them somewhere. But so this here you can see is will be honeycomb. It's nice and clean. And then this side is brood comb. And so with the honeycomb side, you can see it's all uncapped. And that means that the tops aren't covered with wax. Once they cover these tops with wax, then that honey is preserved. It means they've removed enough water for the honey to stay in there basically indefinitely, and it won't ferment or rot. This right here, because it's uncapped, has a lot of water still in it, which means it would actually go bad over time. But looking over on the brood side, we can see, I'm going to switch to a different device here. You can see that there are covered cells. Now, some of these cells are honey, but a lot of these cells on this darker side are brood cells. So you can look down the hole and look down kind of in the cavern here and see that like little babies would have come out of each one of these. And the ones that like this one that are still covered have a baby inside of them, have a larva inside of them that's growing into a bee. So I did pull a few larvae, and I didn't do that just to be cruel. These bees are not going to survive in this shape because they're not in the hive and they're not supported by fully grown bees. But that's what one of the larvae looks like. And you can see this one, I just took him out here. And so he's only kind of partially out of the space. And so at this point, he's got a head, he's got his body, but it's not colored, and he does have the beginning of wings. Now, the other reason that I take the larvae out, besides just kind of it's interesting to see them at different stages of development, these bees were pretty far along in their development and probably would have hatched soon. But the other reason to do it is because you can check for mites. And so when I open up some of these larvae, when you pull them out there, in addition to the larva, there's this little bug, which is a mite. And as part of my servicing today, that actually is an ant. I apologize, that's not a mite. But there are, let's see if it'll focus in there. That's an ant, that is a mite, if you can see it. Here is another one. Right there. They're very, very tiny. There's the larva, there's the mite. And 2 or 3 of these will, their eggs will go into these cells, and then they feed off the larva, which doesn't kill the larva. Then the bee will carry these around to more cells, and then they'll continue to propagate throughout the hive. And they spread viruses throughout the bees, and they just generally weaken the hive, and that's usually the final, that often kills hives. So I did do a treatment of formic acid in the hive at the same time as I was in the hive today. You can see here, this comb is dark comb, but has honey in it. So it was probably repurposed. The queen got up here and she laid eggs, and then they hatched, and then the workers cleaned it out, and it looks like they refilled it with honey, which they'll do. That kind of honey has, I mean, if you eat it, it has a very strong flavor because it's, kind of dirty from the birthing process. I try to not eat that honey at all and just give that honey to the bees. But you can see this, this right here, this crack between is really uniform. The space between the combs is really uniform. And over here, we can see that exact same space, and that's called bee space. And a very long time ago, they measured what that space is. And if you reproduce that space plus the length of each chamber on each side, you get bee space, which is if you put 2 frames that distance, they'll grow out each side, but they'll leave enough space so that they can walk between them. And that stops them from doing things like building bridges and connecting one frame to another, although it still happens. It doesn't happen very often. I mean, you can see, going back to this piece, it's, you know, it weaves, but it's pretty consistent in terms of the distance that they're giving themselves so that they can walk around between them. But predators have a hard time going in there. It creates like defensive chambers, it creates airflow. It's pretty remarkable. So just thought I'd share all that with you. Yeah, have a great day.